What's up, Duval? It's your favorite Jag, Bucky Brooks, and this is Bleav in Jaguars, a podcast dedicated to all things Jacksonville Jaguars. And we have reached the bye week. The bye week in an NFL season is a perfect opportunity to reflect, refocus, reset, and try and find a way to finish the season the best way that you can. Obviously, being Jag fans, we would say that we're very disappointed in the way the season has started out. The team is currently 2-9 at the bottom. If the season ended today, the Jags would hold the number one pick in the draft for the third time in 5 years. And it's certainly not a place where any of us envisioned this team being. So what I want to do is I want to take this podcast to just kind of do an overall analysis of the season and where the Jags go from here. But before we get into that, let's pay a shout out to our sponsor, Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch games as it happens. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA, head to Bet Online today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online, the game starts here. Guys, I wish that we could reset and start the season because it just seemed like yesterday that the Jaguars were feeling good. They were optimistic. They were winning the season opener against the Miami Dolphins. They were on their way to blowing the Dolphins out. Travis Etienne is about to scoot into the end zone. Fumble happens. Big play happens to Tyreek Hill the next. And from that point on, the season has kind of spiraled in a way that many of us could not expect to see. If you look at this team, we talk about 2-9, but really since the team was 8-3 a year ago, currently 3-14. Like, just let that sit in. 3-14. This year they've lost I think 6 of 8 losses have been within a score. The team has played close but haven't been able to finish. But now you're coming on the heels of a blowout loss to the Detroit Lions, where the team didn't even look competitive against one of the NFC heavyweights in the Lions. 52-6, the Lions had their way from the beginning of the game. And what that game did, it just kind of showcased what the Lions are and how the Lions have been able to do a rebuild and reset to become one of the dominant teams in the National Football League with Dan Campbell as a coach. And it's taken 4 years for them to get to that point. You think about they were 3-13, they were 8-7-1. They then last year go to the NFC Championship game, and now they're on their way to maybe being the number one seed. Meanwhile, the Jaguars have had a back-to-back 9-8 seasons, and right now we're talking about the team vying for the number one pick in the draft. And it's something that, with Doug Pederson being installed as the coach, certainly had high hopes. You thought the back-to-back winning seasons, even though last season was a collapse, was maybe the start of a nice run for the Jags where they would consistently be in the conversation, not only of being a playoff team, but a team that would eventually compete for the Super Bowl and those things. And it hasn't gone that way. And look, I not only surprised to us, but a surprise to Shah Khan, who thought this was the best team, the most talented team that he's constructed during his time owning the team. You talk about Doug Pederson co-signing on that, talking about how tough the training camp was, how tough everything has been in the offseason to prepare the team to really play well in 2024. You heard the players talk about how tough the camp has been, how they put the pads on, how they've done all those things, and kind of had an old school mentality when it came to the grind. But for the team to be here at 2-9 suggests that all of that stuff, not that they didn't go through a tough camp, but the words and the actions aren't marrying up. A team that was expected to be a tough-minded team, a team that was ready for it all based on what they endured the previous year in terms of falling apart at the end, how they vow to rectify those issues in the offseason, a more together team, a team that was about their business, a team that was holding everyone accountable for their actions, whether it's preparation, practice habits, performance. All of those things sounded terrific. But when we've kicked off the season, we have not seen those actions translated into better performance. Looking at it, I think there are a few ways to kind of look at the team. Is the team talented enough to be better than the record indicates? Absolutely. Team is talented enough to be one of the better teams in the league, one of the better teams in the AFC. I'm not saying this team is not without flaws, but there's enough talent on this team that they should be vying for the division or one of those spots, 5, 6, 7 in the playoff hunt. The fact that they're not, I would say it's a failure in every level. Players, coach, front office, everyone has failed to get the job done. And so everyone has to be accountable for that. You won't hear me on the podcast advocate for somebody to get fired. But normally what happens in these situations when you have a gross level of underachievement, decisions are made and there are consequences that people suffer when a season doesn't go the way that it was expected to go. And so whether it's Doug Pederson, whether there's Trent Baalke, whether it's both, who knows? Whether it's members of the coaching staff who are expected to fix certain areas of the team, who knows? It's a very expensive ordeal to go about that. And so while everyone was anticipating a bunch of moves or flurry of moves at the bye week, it may be a situation where owner Shad Khan is going to continue to evaluate the team, make a decision at the end of the year, and just kind of go about it that way. So let's proceed that that's what's going to happen, because right now, like, we're in the middle of the week and nothing has happened. So we have to assume that nothing's going to happen this week. And so if that's the case, you have to look at where the team is and how did they finish. 6 games left on the schedule. You got to play it out regardless of what your record is. And so if you're Doug Pederson, you're the coaching staff, you got to figure out a way to take these 6 games, look at everything that has transpired over the first 11. What do you like? What don't you like? What can you fix? What can you change to help this team play its best ball down the stretch? First thing, let's talk about the offense. There was a huge issue in the offseason on who was going to call the plays. Was it going to be Press Taylor, Doug Pederson? I would say that Coach Pederson probably extended a conversation that didn't really need to be lengthy into a thing that became a bit of a soap opera when he never acknowledged or said, like, hey, Press Taylor's the offensive coordinator. He's calling the thing. My job is I'm going to run the team. I'm going to oversee everything, manage the personnel, manage the people, make sure that the culture and the vibe is right. But I'm going to let Press do his thing on offense. He later finally admitted that Press Taylor is calling the plays and those things. I would say for Press Taylor, it's been tough sledding because the offense has not performed well. It's not performed to the level that we thought it would be able to perform at based on the talent that the team has. Not only a quarterback and a franchise quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who you paid. Look, you're willing to pay $55 million annually to at the end of his rookie contract, someone that you expect to be able to elevate his game to, let's say, Pro Bowl consideration. He's not played to that. I would say early part of the year, some of that was him pressing probably to prove his worth to everybody. So even though he secured the contract, he may have wanted to prove to the Jaguars fans, here's why you pay me the money that you pay me. I'm going to prove to you guys and to everyone on the team that I'm worthy of being considered a top 5, a top 10 quarterback. I am more than enough when it comes to being a franchise quarterback and those things. And I would say that pressure impacted his play and performance early on. After a few games, he kind of settled in, and we saw some of the better parts of Trevor Lawrence in his game. When we anticipated the team playing well, part of that anticipation came from the fact that you had a team on offense that had Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, 2 guys that were probably co-number ones of the passing game coming back. You surrounded them with big playmakers in Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. You thought that you had the vertical element to be able to kind of lift the blanket on the coverage on those other guys, and that Kirk and Ingram would eat underneath. Hasn't really come to fruition. I would say BTJ has been better than advertised in terms of being a potential number 1 receiver, big playmaker. We've seen the big plays whenever he's got his hands on the ball. He is someone who is worthy of being considered or penciled in to be the number 1 wide receiver of the future. And that doesn't mean that you have to move on from Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. It just means in the pecking order, you always make sure that Brian Thomas Jr. is the guy that is at the top of the list in terms of touches, targets, and those things. Gabe Davis has been a major disappointment to me. He's been a disappointment in terms of like the lack of big plays. I would say the inconsistency in his play and what he was expected to be, he has not been. He was expected to be a good number 2, someone that could handle some of the responsibilities that when teams shifted their coverage or doubled Christian Kirk, or they tried to make a concerted effort to take Kirk and Ingram away, that Gabe Davis on the other side would be able to win and win consistently and punish opponents for tilting their coverage to number 13 or number 17. That hasn't happened. Brian Thomas Jr. has made people pay early in the year when the focus was on Kirk and Ingram. Man, he was killing it. Big plays. We saw shot after shot where he's able to get free and get loose. After the injury to Kirk, he still continued to be a guy that is a major factor on this offense. I would say he should see anywhere from 10 to 15 targets a night. He's not getting that, but what we're seeing is whenever he touches the ball, he makes big things happen. The last part of the season, he has to be the go-to guy when it comes to their offense, where the ball goes. Running backs, Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby. Travis has some injuries, but Tank Bigsby is the one that has been really impressive. This dude is an RB1 if I've seen one. He's a workhorse running back. He runs with power. He shows violence. He finishes well. He can get outside and make big plays happen. He is a complete running back who is worthy of getting, I would say, an even greater share of the load based on what he showed early. Travis Etienne, I think there's still a role for him. He certainly can be a change of pace back. He can do some of the things that you want to see from your number one, to the point where I don't, but I Bleav the Jags could probably have code number ones when it comes to the RB room. It can be very similar to the way that we saw on Sunday David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs utilized. Those guys swapped in and out every other series, and you allow both of them to get their own shine instead of shuttling them in and out. You let them get comfortable. You let them have the bulk of the carries. You put in runs that played to each of their skill sets. Same could be said for Bigsby and Etienne. Hopefully down the stretch, we'll see both of those guys maybe utilized even more with the ball in their hands as runners. Up front, the offensive line, look, it's been a bit of an issue for the past 2 years, but at the end of last season, Trent Baalke and company elected to run it back. Didn't make any sweeping changes. They had Ezra Cleveland at the sign at the end of the year. They brought Mitch Morse over after he was a salary cap casualty from Buffalo. They bring him in to replace Luke Fortner. Cam Robinson came back. You had Anton Harrison. You had the bookends. You thought that they would be ready to play because of their athleticism. Hasn't gone according to plan. Cam Robinson was eventually traded away after having a little situation, injury, and then not wanting to play that game where you demoted him, put Walker Little in, so he's no longer there. Walker Little has played, but he's been madly inconsistent like he has been throughout his time with the Jags. He hasn't stepped up and played like a premier or even blossoming elite left tackle. You have some issues where Ezra Cleveland has missed some time. Mitch Morse has been okay. Brandon Scherf has struggled sometimes at the point of attack. And then Anton Harrison has regressed and not been the player that flashed last year that he had the potential to be a Pro Bowl caliber player. What it leaves you is an offense that has underperformed, and some of that has shown up in the team's inability to be able to convert these gotta-have-it situations. Second, third and long, second and third and short, fourth and whatever. Team hasn't been able to convert. And a lot of that is due to the inability to be able to generate a push at the line of scrimmage, lack of physicality, lack of strength and explosion. To me, says that, look, you got to look at this offensive line, see who you have available, and see how can you fix it down the line. Can't fix it this season. You got to roll with what you have. But I would say that the offensive line continues to be a major problem because they can't dominate at the point of attack against the good defenses that they'll face. As bad as I talk about the offense, man, the defense is even worse. Defense is operating at a historically bad pace. I love what Ryan Nielsen was talking about when he took the job. He talked about simplicity, fundamentals, wanted to make sure that they were in attack mode, but they wanted to operate knowing that nothing cheap, nothing deep. No cheap touchdowns, no deep touchdowns. Keep everything in front, and eventually the odds will play in your favor where you'll get the stop, you get a turnover, you make something good happen and get off the field. That has not happened. Teams are going up and down the field at will against this Jags defense. And it doesn't matter if we blitz, we play man, we play zone, whatever tactic that Nielsen has opted for, the opponent is at a counter, and they've exploited the tactic with the counter strategies. And look, it's been disappointing because when I watched the team in practice over the course of the offseason in training camp, I love the details. I love the fundamental focus. I love the communication between all members on the team, including the staff. Like, it was constant dialogue, constant feedback, constant updated information to allow players to be at their best. And I thought it really was going to have promising results based on not only the preseason. And look, I get it. Preseason is nothing like the regular season, but in calling the games, you can see the vision. You can see where they wanted to go. But since the regular season kicked off, that same team, those same players that demonstrated some of the stuff that we saw that flashed, they haven't been the same guys. And we can talk about the coaches, we can talk about the front office, but some of this falls on the heels of on the shoulders of the players not performing at the highest level, even though they've been given some of the keys and the answers to the test. Kind of disappointing. I would say from a personnel standpoint, defensively, two of the guys that you thought were really going to help you and upgrade your situation, Eric Armstead, Darnell Savage, has been disappointments. Armstead, I guess, was promised to play on the outside, even though he spent his career on the inside. And I would say that it hasn't worked because you're not getting the production and the disruptive plays that you customarily would get from this defense. We're seeing plays from Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen, but no one else are making major contributions. The expectation was Eric Armstead was going to be a key contributor that allowed this team to maybe get funky and do some stuff, but he has not been good enough to make it happen. When he's on the edge, he hasn't been fast enough to close it down. People scooting around the corner, big plays are happening. It just hasn't been good. Darnell Savage is a guy that they were counting on to be a nickel, but he's now since moved to safety, which was his natural position, which is where he always played. But it took us a while to get him in that spot. Could he be better as a tackler? Could he be more forceful and violent as a hitter? Yeah, he can do all those things. But he was brought in initially to be the nickel, and then he's transitioned to being the safety. Hopefully down the stretch, he'll play better because he's in a position that most fits or best fits his skill set. Linebacker core. Look, Foye Oluokun continues to dazzle. Great sideline to sideline playmaker, does everything that you want to see at the position. Devin Lloyd is a little hot cold as a player. The Buddha Mike linebacker has been okay. It can be overwhelming at times when you have to match up with backs, but you got to understand the tips and the pre-snap clues that are happening to be able to play faster. Devin Lloyd has shown some of that, but it's been inconsistent when it comes to delivering that A-level performance that you expect from a first-round talent. And the secondary has been victimized. Not even just the secondary. The linebackers and secondary have been victimized over and over and over again by these teams with these dynamic aerial attacks. Coordinators are finding ways to put their top defenders in conflict, and they are relentlessly going after those defenders that are subject to be exploited. I don't know if they're wearing yellow pennies in practice where they have the designated fish each week wearing that so they can run all their plays working against him. But there's something that this team is doing to single out some of the best players, and they're blotting them out. When I look at the secondary, they've had their moments when we talk about blotting them out. They've had their moments where they played good bend but don't break defense because they went from being a team that was heavy man the first few weeks to after the blowout loss to the Buffalo Bills, they changed. They slowed the game down. They became a little more zone friendly. They really focused on keeping the ball in front of the defense, not letting the big plays go overhead, making the team drive the length of the field, doing all those things. Even though it's expensive when it comes to the clock, it's worth it because you're able to stay in the game. The issue that you have is critical situations. They're not making enough plays on defense to get off the field. Some of it is due to the penalties, the poor execution, just blowing assignments in key moments. All of those things have reared its ugly head in key moments. The other thing is just being overwhelmed. The other guy has just better guys than you have on that side of the ball, and you can't do anything about it. Whether it's putting a running back on a linebacker, tight end on a safety or a linebacker, running the ball right at a struggling group of defensive tackles, opponents have been able to identify which areas of the team are weak, and they're relentlessly going at those areas. Ryan Nielsen is a good coach. I can tell by the way that he runs a practice. I can tell by the things that he talks about. Like, I don't view his pressers as like just coach speak, but there's something that is not right with the defense. And you have to spend the bye week trying to figure out what you can do. Can you simplify? Can you go fundamental focus? Can you remind them of what the tenets and the principles of the defense, what they are? Or do you have to just like, hey, let's cut it down. Let's line up in a few different things and see if we can play faster going ahead. Whatever it is, it can't be what it's been up to this point, which has been a woeful and disappointing defense, a defense that has been, smacked around, a defense that has been really like the lack of speed and explosion has shown up. All of those things, they are the inferior team when you see it on turf. But the good news is there's 6 games left 6 games left in the season. And in those 6 games, you'll have an opportunity to reset, refocus, and see if you can finish the season strong. If you're Doug Pederson and you're given an opportunity to finish the season, what you want to do is you want to show progress. You want to finish the game hot. You want to finish the game with the team looking like it should look. Meaning, when I look at the team without the sound on the TV or just being there without hearing what the coaches are talking about, I should see a team that plays fast, that has great energy and enthusiasm, that has a great attitude, that shows some resilience and grit and toughness. All of those things. That has to be talked about. Attitude and effort have to be preached daily when the players return into the building. The number one goal of the coaches is to get this team to play hard. And when I mean playing hard, they're flying to the ball. They're going after it. They're not afraid. They're not timid. They're just playing with an energy that you can sense when watching them. That has to be the number one thing. I want to see this team play and let it loose. Like, the playoffs are not out there. So right now you want to take these six games and build momentum heading down the stretch. If they do that, you'll be proud of the job that was done, and you'll feel better about where the team could be in 2025 with or without the current regime or whatever. We'll have time to see how that plays out, but that's what you have to do. You got to build momentum for the stretch run to see if you can get it. $1 million question that will go on quietly around the office will be, what happens to number 16? What do we do with Trevor Lawrence? Trevor Lawrence is suffering from an injury to his non-throwing shoulder, but it's an injury that might require some work in the offseason. What do you do if the Jacksonville Jaguars, and do you play Trevor? Do you sit him down, shut him down, and just finish out the season with Mac Jones and C.J. Beathard playing quarterback? A lot of it depends on Trevor Lawrence and how he feels, but there's certainly a risk and a reward to put him out the field, to putting him on the field the last 6 games. The reward: offense plays better. You begin to score touchdowns, changes the energy of the team. The defense plays harder because now they believe that they can win because the starting quarterback is back in the lineup. Impacts you positively. Negatively, you worry about, okay, if we prolong anything, if he has to, have a surgery or has to do like extensive rehab, we probably want to jump him in now to make sure that he's ready when we go back to OTAs or any of that stuff. We don't want to miss him so much time that it impacts 2025. That is a consideration. You don't want another injury. You don't want him playing, and all of a sudden there's a serious injury that take place that knocks him out for the rest of the year, maybe leads into the next offseason. Those are the things that you worry about. But here's what I would say. If I'm Doug Pederson, if I'm this team in the organization, and I have the opportunity to finish the stretch, we have to come out at the end of the season with everyone in the league knowing what our identity is. Style of play, effort level, energy level, all those things have to stand out and pop on the screen. Because if they do, then I feel great about what we're building, and I feel great about the momentum heading into 2025. So over the bye week, I've heard this, like, the players out of the building, the players won't return until Monday. Doug Pederson, their coaching staff, they got to get together. They got to figure out what works, what doesn't work. They may have to just scrap the entire plan and say, this is what we're going to do. Over the next 4 days, we're going to build out a plan to get this team that we currently have ready to play their best ball in 6 games. That might be a consideration. That might show us a different style of offense, a different pace, a different rhythm, a different tempo. But when you're sitting at 2-9, all bets are off, and the whispers are out there about the coach and the general manager being fired. It is on Doug Pederson to assume the leadership, take the bull by his horns, and find a way to get this team to play better down the stretch. If he does that, potentially he can keep his job, but moreover, he will leave the situation better than he inherited it, as the team is kind of going into the offseason with some momentum. So those are a few thoughts on what the Jags can do or what they should be doing during the bye week. The players out of the building, but the coaching staff is there. And so if they can take care of that, get everyone on the same page, put out a plan that allows these guys to come back energized and ready, maybe we can see the Jags win a few games down the stretch. Until then, you make sure you check out the Bleav Network. Look at all the cool stuff that we got going on. Check out the YouTube channel. Check out the stuff that we have on football, all of the channels. Make sure you check out my colleagues and the cool work that they're doing. Make sure you stay here on Bleav in Jaguars. As we get closer to the end of the season, we'll start transitioning and talking about the draft and some of that other stuff. So keep it locked. Make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe to the podcast, Bleav in Jags. we're doing the best we can to connect the community, give you a little analysis that makes you smarter than your friends when it comes to watching the game. Until next time, I'm Bucky Brooks. This is Bleav in Jags. I'll talk to you soon.